Welcome in, Whappers, where tonight for Around the World we're going to take a look at social consequences of the Industrial Revolution. And we're going to phrase this in sort of from the standpoint of the British Industrial Revolution. But remember, the effects of the Industrial Revolution carried over to other European countries, not just Britain. So by far, one of the most important developments that occurred in the Industrial Revolution was shifting production from the home to factories. And while we didn't get into that in class today, it was certainly a big part of the reading that you all had last week. And so in looking at this shift in production, I really want to focus on just talking about that for a moment. And let's just take, since I have here an air freshener. Okay, I have an air freshener that was given to me by a 7th grader for the holidays. So we have an air freshener, and let's say that I am producing air fresheners in my home, which is what most people did for all sorts of materials prior to the Industrial Revolutions. This air freshener, I had to make everything from scratch and had to make everything from hand, and I did this in my own time at my home. And I would produce these goods, air fresheners, and then sell them and make money off them. Well, that sounds like a pretty good way to make a little extra cash, especially if I'm a farmer and I don't have a lot going on in my spare time. The problem is, though, that these air fresheners take a lot of time to produce. They're very costly in terms of my time. And there is a theory within economics called the labor theory of value. And the labor theory of value basically says that a product should be as expensive as it costs to make. So in other words, the more time it takes to make a product, the more expensive and more valuable the product should be. It's the labor theory of value. And this air freshener takes a while to produce, which means I can only make a certain number of air fresheners in a given day or a given week or whatever, and that limits the amount of time that I can spend making air fresheners. But the quality is really good. The quality is really good. Now, if I'm doing this sort of, making these air fresheners, I'm what you may call an artisan or a skilled laborer. Someone who has a particular skill or a gift or a talent in producing certain goods, like air fresheners. So as an air freshener artisan or an air freshener skilled laborer, I make some great air fresheners. Now, somewhere along the line in the Industrial Revolution, this system, which was known as the domestic system or the cottage system, which was really the means of which, for centuries, people produced goods. They made them within their homes and then sold them. This takes time, although the quality of work is extremely good. Now, somewhere along the line, as farmers were working less because of the agricultural revolution, and as more and more people were being born and growing into the British Empire, with all these raw materials, these factors we talked about earlier today, the evolution of the factory system evolved, and factories began to populate European cities, especially in England. And another reason why England, by the way, this is a good why England for factories, coal. Coal was a main resource that burned to create energy to fuel factories, along with rivers and streams, which were used as water, hydropower to power the machines that would eventually go into making products like air fresheners, in my hypothetical. So the more factories that started to pop up, who does that harm the most? Well, it impacts the artisans, the skilled laborers like myself, who are making all the products in their home. We're getting harmed by this because now some air freshener factory opens up in London, and this air freshener factory is making products like mine a lot quicker, a lot faster, a lot more efficiently thanks to machinery, thanks to coal power and hydropower machinery. And now we're effectively looking at a case where me, the cottage manufacturer, the domestic manufacturer, now us, these artisans, are getting run out of business. We can't keep up with the production that was going on in the factory system. And that production level in the factory system has momentous effects on social roles within European societies. The artisans, the skilled laborers, they may still have done their thing, but a whole new class of people are now emerging with money in their pockets. And these factory workers are going off into the factories, making products, And of course, air fresheners were not made back then, but clothes, textiles, iron, tools, shipbuilding, I mean, you name it. All sorts of technological innovations led to the growth of new industries. And each new industry demanded a factory to where it could be built. You can't build the steam engine in your home. You can't build the steam engine on your farm. You need a factory to do this. You need heavy machinery, equipment. And the means of production, these tools that were being used to make these factories and these innovative technologies all came from either natural resources, if your country was lucky enough, like Britain was with coal, or you imported it from the colonies, like cotton, which came from India or the Americas for the sake of the British. The production of these goods transformed how people lived because, again, the production is now shifting from the home, the cottage, to the factories, which means also people are migrating now to factories. People are moving to where they can get these jobs. Factories typically were built in the center of cities. And so the evolution of factories also correlates to the rise in big cities in Europe. And some of the largest cities that exist today in Europe at one point were great cities in the Industrial Revolution. This also is important because now cities, large cities, didn't necessarily have to be built near the coast. A lot of port cities were crucial in ocean trade, but now with the advent of the Industrial Revolutions, cities could be built further away from the oceans, further away from the seas, because that's where the jobs were and that's where the factories were. Now, I mentioned that people have more money in their pockets, and that's going to really shake up social dynamics within European societies. European societies, a good word to describe how they were during the 1800s, were aristocratic. Wealthy landowners had the majority of power within society. Think of what we talked about with the French Revolution, with the first and second estate dominating the power. Throughout Europe, including Britain, there was an aristocratic class of wealthy landowners who held titles and nobility and power and land. And these were the people that owned the factories, of course, too. But people that went to work in the factory system were not being paid nothing. They were not slaves. They were not indentured servants. They were working and earning a wage. For the first time, really, in human history, people were earning wages for the labor that they put in every day. Farmers don't do that. Farmers have to wait till their crops are produced. Artisans have to wait till their goods are sold. But for factory workers, you show up, you make a wage, you earn a wage, that's it. You go home with money in your pocket. That changes the dynamics of social structures in Europe. People started having money, which means people had the abilities to buy better homes, people had the abilities to travel, people had the abilities to leave, people had the abilities to invest and save. And so not only does the Industrial Revolution offer people more money, but think about the other consequences too. You're going to now need banking institutions. You're going to need, people are going to need people are going to be looking to buy more goods. So commercialization starts in a small way early on. People have more money, they're going to spend it, and spend it on goods and luxury items. So this produces a dramatic effect in the fact that people have more money in their pockets. And that over time, people could use that money to rise up in society. And slowly but surely, the aristocratic class within Europe was taken down a notch by the fact that there was so much money and wealth that was now flowing out of the factories and into the pockets of workers all throughout Europe. But as we'll learn later in the week, the conditions that workers worked in and the conditions that people lived in the Industrial Revolution was no picnic. And that's going to be sort of our topic we come off of after the team trivia tomorrow. I really want to focus on the conditions in factories and how those conditions and the conditions within European society ultimately marked an important revolution, social revolution, in and of itself. And that's going to give rise to things like communism, theories about workers' rights and workers' roles, and also it's going to contribute to the rise of labor unions, organizations that will serve the purpose of defending the rights of workers in factories. So hopefully that was pretty concise for you all. This is a lot of common sense stuff. Everything flows and is tied together. So obviously feel free to come in for office hours next week. if you want to follow up any questions on this. But tomorrow we do have team trivia, so I ask that when everyone arrives in class tomorrow, please have a whiteboard out, your individual whiteboard, and we'll do the team stuff where we work together and average the scores. I'll leave things as I always do. The past shapes the future, WAP. Have a great evening. See you guys all tomorrow.